Welcome to the SJ Child Show, where a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. Enjoy the show. Hello, and thank you so much for joining the SJ Child Show. Here's a little shout out for today's episodes. Kimberly Frey Consulting, Karen Gilbo with Gilbo Girls Podcast, Stephanie Joseph, Dance to Remember Podcast, and don't forget the 1 in 36 Mix Virtual Autism Summit coming August 11th and 12th. 36 autistic speakers, advocates, professionals, podcasts, panels, and more. Come and check it out. It'll be on the Hopin platform. I'll have a link in the show notes. Thanks so much. If you want to shout out, email sjchildshow@gmail.com. Enjoy the show. Thank you so much for joining us in the SJ Child Show today. I am thrilled to have made a new friend all the way around the globe. And here I go, disappearing again, first off the bat. It's so great to have you here, Fiona. And those that are listening won't even know that we're having technical difficulties on the other end. So thank you so much for agreeing to be here today, and I'm really excited to get into our conversation. So without further ado, please introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you.
Thanks, Sarah. Oh, so fun to be having this conversation because we have so many synergies. So as you said, I'm from Australia. My husband's from the US. I'm an artist and a business coach. I do a lot of work around the intersection between creativity and business and art, and all of that is just so fascinating to me. I have 2 daughters, and my younger daughter is on the autism spectrum, and she and I are currently writing a book about our story called Tiny Wings.
I love that. And like you and I were saying, the stories that we can share with the world and the different perspectives, that's exactly what we need right now in our society, for other families to be able to look out and say, good, there's somebody going through something similar to me. I can gain some more perspective on this.
Absolutely. That was life-changing for us in our journey of going, what is going on here with this kid? It was stories that really helped me get an inside view of what living with autism is like, because I'd had 8 years of trying to figure out what was going on inside this kid's head. And books and stories, particularly from other women on the spectrum, really helped me get an idea of, okay, this is where we're going and this is how I can parent before we get to being an adult on the spectrum. It was just life-changing.
Yeah. And like you said, thank goodness too, authors like Jennifer Cook, who put it in the forefront for us with Autism and Heals on how we could better have a better perspective of how to support the females in the world that were going through possibly undiagnosed, like your daughter, and then through that diagnosis process, what that looks like and how it can be so much different than the cis male, diagnosis across the board.
Yeah, I didn't really realize that in the beginning, that just in the same way that other things, heart disease, for instance, manifests differently in women than it does in men. The symptoms are different. It's the same with autism, and that so much, as Jennifer Cook points out, so much of that early work was done in boys and in men, and it just doesn't look the same in girls and women. And even from one girl to another, that's something Jennifer Cook's helped me realize this last year, is that it just looks really different in girls with a high IQ versus girls who maybe have cognitive delay or other things going on. They're just also different, and yet there's these important similarities around executive functioning and just so many helpful things to learn from each other's stories.
Absolutely. What do you say were some signs that you saw early on for Michaela, is it?
Yeah, it's Michaela, who's my second daughter. Even right from the beginning of my pregnancy, it just felt like everything was a struggle. I was told a few weeks in that I'd miscarried. So I grieved this baby for 2 weeks and then went for a checkup, and there was a little heartbeat fluttering on the monitor. She's still there.
Oh.
So we were just so excited because we had already loved and wanted this baby very much. But my pregnancy continued to be difficult. I had more bleeding. I was told at one stage they thought the baby had Down syndrome, only to call me back and tell me it had been a mistake. So it felt like there was trauma all the way along. I developed a DVT and ended up on blood thinners because of the clot in my leg. And then when she was finally born, she was very tiny. And I took her home on Mother's Day in 1998. And the next day I was rushed back to hospital with a massive postpartum hemorrhage. That was mismanaged and I nearly lost my life.
Oh, my goodness.
4 days later, thankfully, some friends were praying and my husband pleaded with one of the nurses to call my specialist who wasn't on duty, which he did. And my specialist came and did some life-changing surgery. So we made it through that. But even before I brought Michaela home from the hospital, Mike and I just knew something was wrong. He knew it. Mike has a medical background. He was a respiratory therapist, did a lot of neonatal work. So he's been around newborns and the checking process of, is this baby okay? What are we looking at? And he just immediately recognised something wasn't right. He just intuited that something was different. And he actually only told me that in the process of writing this book this last year. I never knew that. But a few days later, before I brought her home, so this must have been day 3 perhaps, I was getting her dressed to bring her home from hospital and something just wasn't quite right. Sticking her tongue out, a large head. There were just a few other little anomalies. And so I called the doctors and asked them to have a look. And they said, yes, we think there's probably some kind of syndrome. We need to send her off to some specialists. Gulp.
Yeah.
Really wants to, hear this about their newborn. But we had no idea what kind of an issue. So round of specialists began. And there were a few problems with her spine and her digestive system, but nothing major. And they just said, basically, she'll be fine, take her home. Not a whisper of autism. A few years later, actually probably 18 months later, a family friend who was a nurse said, actually to my mum, something wrong with Fiona's baby. I don't know I don't know what it is, but this enlarged head, there's just something. I think she should go back to the specialists. So we did. Which actually saved her eyesight in the long run. She had a turn in her eye. But they didn't recognise autism. And, of course, in a 18-month-old infant, it would have been challenging.
Yeah.
It could probably be done now, but, 99, 2000.
Exactly.
It just wasn't recognised. So we were just sort of dealing with the fact that, okay, this child is slow on all her milestones, walking or sitting up, walking, talking. She's playing on her own, sorting cotton balls from one tub to another for hours, perfectly content. That doesn't seem normal. What's going on? Just quite introverted, and yet some interaction with the family. But there came a point where she was 5 where there was a bit of a breakthrough in connection, and that came through books. We borrowed books from the library all the time because reading to her was just something that worked for us. She was very peaceful, sit next to me, not say anything, but obviously enjoy the experience. So we read a lot of books. And we read a book called called All Things Bright and Beautiful. And it was the words of Cecil Francis Alexander's hymn, All Things Bright and Beautiful, All Creatures Great and Small. And it was just beautifully illustrated by Bruce Watley with pictures of a girl walking her dog through the country. And so we loved it. We read it over and over and over and over. And then one day she hopped up after we read the book again, and all of a sudden she called out. She said, "Look, Mummy, tiny wings." She'd seen a little lacewing moth on the glass door. And I was floored. This kid's 5, and she's never said to me before, "Look, Mummy," anything. This was the first time she had initiated, this is what I'm thinking and I want to share it with you. Well, I just about lost it with just, wow. And the fact that what she was thinking was so beautiful.
Yeah.
So that sort of started a game for us of looking for birds and butterflies, anything with tiny wings. And it was just a point of connection that was really special with this kid, where I knew something was going on, but I had no name for it, and I had no way of knowing how to help her. But that came later, yeah, when at 8 we realised, oh, well, okay, maybe it's autism, maybe it's Asperger's syndrome was the way it was described to us at the time. And I went straight to the library and borrowed everything I could find, including the Oasis guide to Asperger's syndrome. And that I remember sitting in bed, reading the book, and just tears coming to my eyes going, oh, my goodness, finally someone has explained my child to me. Finally, I can see what's going on the inside. And I've done so many things that weren't helpful. It was just amazing. Such grief and relief all mixed up together.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't that so true? Those overwhelming feelings of now I know and now I can do better and plan, because once we have that information, that's everything, a little quote we love to say is a little bit of information. Oh my gosh, I'm a little bit a little bit of knowledge turns fear into understanding. And it just goes for that too. And it really, when you're sitting in that fear of not knowing, and that goes for peers of kids that are neurodiverse, and they have that not understanding why their peers are a little bit different or anything. And you just share that little bit of knowledge with them, and they can be so compassionate and so understanding.
Oh, I've totally found that to be true. We've chosen a very open response, and Michaela, thankfully, has been absolutely on board with that. We've always been very transparent about her diagnosis. And so many times I just see a response change from an awkward, almost annoyed, or like, well, that's weird, dissolve into, oh, just compassion and kindness. So, yeah, for us, open disclosure has been a real asset in helping tap into people's compassion and understanding, and helping them realize what they're dealing with.
Yeah. So when she did get her diagnosis, were you able to find support through their school systems and therapy?
When I realized what was going on, she was 8 and she was still being homeschooled. And around that time, as I realized what I was dealing with, I began to realize how much she needed neurotypical kids as role models. And we were homeschooling at the time along with my sister and her kids. So we had our own inbuilt community of 6 kids. But it wasn't enough. She needed more kids to watch and learn from. And I was struggling with homeschooling, being the therapist, just all the things. It was becoming overwhelming for me. And I was struggling with just getting angry because I was just overloaded, really. And my older daughter, I realized she just wanted to stretch her wings and needed some more social opportunity. So we decided that it was time to end homeschooling for us and move into school. So not only did the official diagnosis help us, even just in talking to the psychologist who we worked with, she was wonderful. My husband and I felt understood in a way we hadn't up to that point. And that was a lovely experience. And then being able to send her to school, where she, at the time, in primary school for the last 2 grades of primary school here at grade 5 and grade 6, she had funded aides. So she shared them with the other kids, but she did have some extra support. And so it was very challenging, but it was a wonderful time of her just sort of finding her way. Moving into high school was really different. That was, thankfully, her primary teacher was an autistic parent, a parent of a child with quite severe autism. So he knew what we were dealing with, and he was terrific. And towards the end of that first year of high school, we sat down for an interview, and I said, so how's she going? And he just looked at me and he said, Fiona, it's not working. She needs a different kind of school. And I sort of went, another big gulp. So in terms of therapy, the therapy side of things, he and his wife introduced us to Writing for the Disabled.
Mm.
And so Michaela did a bit of horse riding.
Wonderful.
And for a while, that was wonderful. She needed some speech help and some coordination help. But our approach had always been that we have a certain amount of energy. She has a very limited amount of energy. So whatever we can do at home, we'll do that first. And if that's not working, then we'll look for outside help. So with her speech and with her coordination, we did, like some daily exercises and things like that, which that was not easy for me. But we saw her coordination improve. We saw her speech improve. And so we didn't feel at that time that we needed outside support beyond just, coping with school and having some extra support there. But we did look for another school. And that when we eventually found one, they were terrific in their extra needs team, their education support team, really helping us come up with solutions. And it wasn't easy. They were very experienced, but as you and I talked about, every kid is different.
Yes.
And trying to work out where their strengths are, where to push, where to accept, nope, this is never going to work for this kid.
Mm-hmm.
That was just an ongoing conversation for years.
And that's so difficult in a group setting with other types of children with other challenges or support needs. And that's it. They definitely do the great work out there for, those teachers and aides that really give their time and for that type of work. That's wonderful. Did you guys ever have like eating or sleeping issues? What did that look like in your home?
Oh, wow. We definitely did. The slimy anything.
Husband and son right there. Yep.
So before I knew what I was dealing with, taking 45 minutes to eat a salad sandwich and thinking, as a parent, your kids have got to eat their veggies and all that sort of thing. Yeah. So trying to work out what was going on here with this difficulty in chewing and this gagging over anything sort of slimy.
Yeah.
What are we dealing with? And after we understood by reading the Oasis Guide and other books, the tactile response to textures and what's classically difficult, we were able to make accommodations and realize, oh my goodness, this is not a discipline thing. This is a sensory thing. And it was so helpful to realize what to swing at and what not. Because as parents, it's so hard to go, okay, what is a neurodiverse issue that needs compassion and what is just plain old parenting? It needs a little bit of tough love and a boundary because you've got both going on and trying to work out, do I need discipline? Do I need compassion? Am I making exceptions that are healthy? Do I need to push this kid or do I need to just pull back and say and make an accommodation? Whew. That's
it is. It's so tricky.
Picnic, is it?
I remember in the very beginning with our son too. And I remember saying to someone, look, my son has his whole life to sit on the toilet and he has his whole life to eat a sandwich. You just let go. Those things are on his terms. Okay.
And we didn't know early on how common celiac disease is. We didn't know how common
we had the same
epilepsy is.
Yes, well, not epilepsy, thank goodness, but we've definitely had changed our diets and casein gluten-free and and like you said, it was in the early 2010 2000. There was nothing available. There was like the hardest time finding stuff to replace the foods he had been eating the whole time. It's really tricky. And so you have to be a committed parent. I think it really comes down to that too. Like you said, choose what you're going to swing at. I love the way you said that because you have to make those choices and really stick to them, especially with those diet changes.
Yes. And for us, we sort of crashed into diagnoses with waking up in the night to a tonic-clonic seizure. And neither of us had ever seen one and thinking, oh, my goodness, what's happened to our child? She's twisted in this position and she's thrown up all over the room. Has something permanently happened to her? Will we ever get our kid back? was frightening because we didn't know what we were dealing with. And eventually, and now actually she's still on medication. She had a few years off, but epilepsy continued to be a challenge for her. And then we had massive stomach pain that led to the celiac diagnosis. So it wasn't like we knew what we were looking for, went and got a test and figured things out in a kind of calm way. We were just dumped into a crisis we didn't understand. She had eyesight issues, and then because she wasn't managing at school, we had extra testing done and discovered she was also dealing with cognitive delay. And though all of those diagnoses helped so much because they meant, okay, for us, this means we're not going to eat a normal diet. There are certain things we can't do with an epileptic diagnosis. Where there's medication involved, and eyesight, there's glasses. We had eye surgery. There are certain things that are going on here. And then with the cognitive delay, it was like, okay, we can accept that certain things in terms of education are just not possible.
Yeah.
So around that time, for me, that was a huge adjustment on so many levels. I'd gone to work full time, and after a while I realised this kid needs ongoing extra support from me, even though she's at school, even though she's got aids. I can't do this. So I gradually backtracked my hours just to make space to deal with the email that comes in every day. Michaela's not coping. This isn't working. We need to have a meeting.
All the appointments.
Could you pick it up at school? And, you know what it's like. Just making space for that support.
Absolutely. I love how you work so closely with your husband and, making it possible. And your daughter, how is their relationship now as they are a little bit older, and that sibling? I love that sibling relationship. I find that it's just so beautiful.
Yeah. Kate, my older daughter, has always been very protective. And in fact, she was awake and part of the drama when Michaela had her first seizure. I think Michaela was about 9 years old when that happened. It was really close to the time we got the autistic diagnosis, just a bit later in that year. And she was very calm in the crisis. We had multiple times. We had, seizures in the night, and we had ambulances come out. And they were sort of, because she was 11 or 12 at the time, she's there in a dressing gown. They're trying to, the young paramedic who's standing on the side, he's trying to be thoughtful, and he says to her, "Oh, did you have a good day?" And she's just like, "Excuse me, my sister's seizing. I don't know if she's dying. And you want to ask about my day?" Like,
love it. I love the bluntness.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't say this out loud, but this is what was going through her.
Bless her heart.
She's just like, "But are you from their right mind?" Things appropriate. He was just young and didn't know what to do. So in her, there was I want to do better for families in crisis. And now she's a nurse.
Oh, goodness.
She's done a lot of palliative care, and just her ability to be there for the family and to her bedside manner, just all of that. Her advocacy is very, very strong. But that doesn't mean that her friendship with Michaela has been easy.
Yeah.
It has not. And it was hard to be that year 8, year 9 high school student going, "My sister is coming to my high school. This is not going to go well. I'm going to get drawn into sorting out her dramas." And sure enough, week 1 or week 2, she's in a classroom. She looks out the window to see her sister in bike ed having a massive meltdown, chucking her bike on the oval. And she's like, "Excuse me, I need to go," and to just go and be there for her. So that care and advocacy has always been there. And the challenge to actually have a relationship. They love each other, but it's always been a challenge to connect and to work at. They're both honest, and in our family, we tend to talk things out.
We're just how did we connect? I mean, our energies are just like shining together. Totally. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, just so helpful. So, the conversations that, like, for example, in the last couple of years, there was a conversation like, Kate, every time you come over to visit, you just automatically fiddle with my hair. Why are you doing that? It ticks me off. I feel like you think I don't look good and I need fixing. And Kate's like, but just it's a way to be affectionate and be girls. And I didn't know you felt like that. Well, would you just ask me before you just relocate my ponytail? Okay, just that kind of respect and trust and miscommunication where what Kate thought was affection and girl stuff and a way to touch and be sisterly was perceived as you're more beautiful than me and you're trying to fix me and you're trying to make me look more acceptable, and just them being able to tell each other what was intended and what was received was so powerful. So now
Amazing.
we don't do that. They connect in different ways, and writing this book together has been a beautiful joint project. It's been really good to talk things through.
Yeah, absolutely. If they ever want to come on to the podcast, please tell them I love sibling episodes. I have done several, and they are my hearts. I mean, they just are the most heartwarming, because you get to just really see how much care and love, especially that sibling that has, more cognitive abilities and that looks after the other. And it's so beautiful, that relationship. And my kids are still 10, 11 and 13. So they're still younger. And, the little big sister that takes care of her older brother. And I think that's really what got me. I'm an only child, so I never had any understanding of what that looked like or what the sibling relationship should be, and how, just like it sounds like in your family, we do a lot of talking things through. And so as well as we can do that with our son at his level of understanding. And, the older that she's gotten, the more understanding and compassion she has, that he might get away with a little bit more, but she also kind of gets more out of her everyday existence. She's able to make friends and to make enemies, either good when you don't make any, right? And so it's interesting when you have that perspective and comparison.
And it's a challenging thing to talk about and to focus on the positives and the fact that there is love there is care, there is advocacy, without diminishing the fact that it has been really hard. And Michaela's multiple diagnoses and the attention that that's taken, that has cost Kate a lot. And we've been connected with her, but we didn't understand what was going on with her fully, and neither did she. And it's only been now in her 20s that both my girls are in their mid-20s. This last year, Kate has discovered that she has ADHD and potentially autism. So this has been a massive journey of going, how did we miss this? This does not look the same in both my girls. And Kate was so verbal, so smart. Right from the minute she was born, we knew this kid was on the ball.
Yeah.
Her emotional intelligence is just stunning. She's gorgeous. She knows, she's always been interested in hair and, how she dresses, even as a little girl. And her ability to connect and make friendships. Her friends just trust her. They pour out their hearts to her, which has been, emotionally overwhelming at times. And she brings that empathy to her work as a nurse. She's a very smart person. So I did not recognize ADHD and autism in this package. And so this year she's been learning what she's discovering. And she discovered it through watching a TikTok video. Her friend showed her a video of a girl falling asleep, and there's all these little captions of thoughts, and the music's just going, I remember. And Katie was just laughing, and she said, oh, that's my brain. And her friend just said, you do know that's an ADHD video, don't you? And Kate's like, what? So it got her curious. And the
Yeah.
more she investigated, the more she went, oh my goodness, I think this is me.
And how much does she feel that connection now with her sister?
Oh yeah, it was been like a tectonic shift for both
Yeah.
of them to realize, wow.
We're in this together.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, there was a really beautiful moment of
Mm.
that. Um, and just fascinating for us to see how very, very different it manifested with a different IQ situation. And just it's different. And yeah, Jennifer Cook's writing has been helpful on that. Her Autism in Heels was an eye opener for me to what it looks like when you've got the high IQ, glamorous, um, apparently socially with it, outgoing sort of presentation,
Yeah.
what's really going on the inside, that, you know, duck swimming with its feet going 90 miles an hour under the surface. And for Kate to be able to articulate what was really going on and just to realize how many points we just underestimated the amount of work she was doing to function at the level she was functioning
Yeah.
at. So she's just, you know, refiguring out life, realizing, oh my goodness, executive
Amazing.
planning is a thing for me too.
Isn't that the truth? Oh my gosh. And we can now, I mean, how are you and your husband feeling? Are you examining your own space and your own minds and kind of your own habits along the way?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure we necessarily have answers about that, but we can see things in each of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And so, although neither of us have gone for a diagnosis or whatever, he and I are, like most couples, really different, opposite sort of personalities, and we've been quite aware of our personalities for a long time. But in neurology is a different thing
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So yeah, just really interesting to look at
Love it.
those, the sensory things, the memory things, the intelligence things. Um, for me, that I'm probably more on the, like, I can see some of the ADHD things. We laugh that I keep my art supplies in clear boxes because if I can't see it, I can't find it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're still in that process of figuring out um, how much comes from us, how much are we in the same boat or not,
Yeah.
or um, and that's not always easy to have those
Yeah.
conversations and to
So
look at it
true.
and to, yeah, it feels overwhelming at times to realize, oh my goodness, both girls are dealing with such difficult things. And, you know, in
Yeah.
Kate's case, endometriosis has been huge.
Oh,
Um,
so sorry to
there's also
hear
another
that.
condition of sort of stretchy ligaments that
Mm.
I don't know what it's called, but apparently most of us have that too. On my side of the family, and that's meant Kate did her ACL just slipping in her socks in a house.
Oh, dang it.
So, you know, once again, we bumbled into a diagnosis with a crisis, not knowing what was going on. So, I mean, and these are really personal things that we're talking about and sharing
Yeah.
about in individuals' journeys. And I'm thankful that my girls are open in the context of knowing stories can be really powerful in helping someone else recognize what's going on with them, hopefully before they
Yeah.
hit a surgery or a
Oh,
crisis.
yeah. And not feel
But
so
yeah,
isolated that somebody is going through that same journey.
yeah, yeah, it's
Definitely.
just so helpful to learn from
Oh, well,
others
I'm so
and to
thankful that
research for
they're,
each other.
let us talk about this too. So thank you very much
Yeah.
to them. Tell us a little bit more about the book and what's the life look like for that? Oh, now we've lost a little bit of technical difficulties again.
Okay.
There we go. Oh, yeah, the connection's just being silly. There we go. Oh, perfect timing, right? Good thing we have good editing these days.
Well, if you want to just repeat that last question, we can pick up from there.
Yeah, absolutely. tell us a little bit about the book and kind of the life of the book and what that looks like now.
So I think it was 2020, I was hosting an art retreat at a beautiful country hotel in the Yarra Valley, and I was sitting with the artists on this retreat that I was hosting. And a little bird hopped up to the table. And so I told them the story of Tiny Wings, of Michaela saying, "Look, Mummy, tiny wings," and how we went looking for tiny birds. The little bird that hopped up was a fairy wren, and they were our favourites. The males are very, very blue, the females more brown, and they make this beautiful tinkling bell sound. They're just gorgeous. So Michaela and I loved to look for them after that Tiny Wings incident. So I was telling them this story, and a friend who's sitting at the table said, "Fiona, you should write a book. You should write it and paint the illustrations, tell the story." And I was kind of taken aback and thought, wow, I expected inspiration to show up for the women who I was teaching on this retreat, but I hadn't really expected it to show up for me. But, you know, as Farmer Hoggett said in Babe, little ideas that tickle and niggle should never be ignored, for in them lie the seeds of destiny. So
Love that.
It didn't go away, this idea. So I started doing some paintings of tiny wings, birds and butterflies, and Michaela and I sort of thought, what are the important parts of our story? And we started sort of outlining some things. And then, of course, COVID happened. And for her, she was working part-time in the library by that point. That sort of our journey of possibility and what kind of work is going to happen for Michaela came about, sort of without going down that whole side story. I had a crazy idea after realising I needed to look at possibility, not just problems, to look at Michaela's strengths, not just advocate for her struggles. I realised that books was a thing that worked for us. She loves to read and has a voracious memory, and the library was her safe place. So she volunteered there. Or actually, she worked there for work experience in school, and it went so well. She was asking if she could skip school sport days, which were a nightmare for her, and help in the library instead. And that went really well a couple of times. And so when I realised she had cognitive delay and couldn't function at school at the level she would need to go on to university, I was scrambling, thinking, what are we going to do? What's she going to do for a job, for a career? And so I approached the library staff and said, would it be crazy? Actually, I approached the special needs department. Would it be crazy if we didn't do the final year of high school, her senior year, which is year 12 here, or BCE? And she just volunteered in the library. And they said, well, we'll think about it. They had a meeting. They came back and they said, the answer is no. Actually, we want to employ her in the library, which was fantastic. So she had 6 fantastic years in her dream job, absolutely loved it. So getting back to the book, she was working in the library. She worked part-time. COVID happened, and so they're working from home now. We're wearing masks. That was a sensory nightmare for her. The whole anxiety of on-again, off-again lockdowns. In Australia, in Melbourne, we were one of the most lockdown cities in the world. And it was very challenging. She'd be coming home from work. There'd be an announcement on the radio, on the bus, that we were going into another lockdown. You know, it was a difficult time. So we put the book on hold, but we've picked it up again in the last 8 months. And as she's more relaxed now, and she's no longer working in the library, she's been working with me on a few projects. So we've had the space to revisit the book. And now we've got our rough draft done. Our early readers are going through it, and we're working on just pulling together the illustrations. And Kate, my older daughter, has been one of our early readers. And so she's, talking things through and offering her perspective, which has been wonderful. She's been better than her editing has been amazing. But we're also reflecting on the ADHD side and thinking, I think we're going to have to write a sequel about her experience and what do we call it? Just ruffled feathers.
I love that.
We're kind of thinking about that idea down the track because her story is so different.
Yeah.
It's been hard to write, going back through the early traumas of her birth experience, my clot, and then the postpartum hemorrhage, nearly dying, going through her seizures. We were traumatized revisiting our trauma. We cried a lot in that early stage of writing it. But it's been a healing journey, and we've tried to write it with a combination of hope and not traumatizing our readers, but also not hiding from saying, guys, this was hard. This was a real struggle. And there were days where there did not seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel, days when we were not hoping, days when I was angry and impatient as a mum, just struggling with the whole thing. And yet, for us, faith has been a huge part of that journey, and just the comfort and reassurance and the provision of God in that journey. We just know that his love was holding us, even at times when we were so exhausted we couldn't feel it. So that's been a real constant. And being able to write that story and look back to remember the night when Mike said, just remember, one day she's going to be 16. And I looked at him like, really? I can't imagine it. You know, now here we are, she'll be 25 in a couple of months.
Wow.
And yeah, she's still dealing with massive health issues on multiple fronts. Life isn't easy, but she's a happy, joyful, purposeful woman who understands where her gifts and strengths are and is learning to use them in beautiful ways.
I love that.
It's been fun to document.
Thank you so, so much for sharing these stories with us today. I feel so blessed to have made this connection with you, and I hope we can stay in touch and really check in with one another and see what's happening, and definitely, you know, make my trip to Australia a lot funner when I have somebody fun to visit. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so, so, so much for your time today. Before we do go, is there social media that we can find you on? In fact, I just was on Instagram and found your page earlier today and followed you, I think, and on Facebook. So yes, tell us about those and where we can find you.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at Fiona Valentine Artist, and my website is fionavalentine.com. And one of the things that I do is business school for artists, and that's helping artists to set up their business and to learn the sales and marketing skills so they can make money from their art, doing what they love. And I also work with businesses in helping them through workshops to unlock the creativity of their teams. I help coach entrepreneurs on the 6 stages of creativity. So all of that's going on in my website, and soon the whole Tiny Wings journey will be there too. So stay tuned for updates on the book coming out. But yeah, FionaValentine.com and at Fiona Valentine Artist on Instagram. I also have a Facebook group if you're interested in creativity and painting. That's The Confident Artist.
Great. Yeah, we'll absolutely have all that information in the show notes. And we're so grateful that we got to take this time with you today. And hopefully we'll be in touch in the future, and can't wait to see Tiny Wings come out and really support you then too. So wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yay. It's been such a joy talking with you. I love all the connections that we've had, and I love the work that you're doing to bring story and encouragement and advocacy in the community, in your teaching and in your books too.
I love it.
It's been fun to connect.
Definitely. No, we're going to definitely have to have a second round of a show with you in the future.
For sure.
So we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.